Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome back to the RotoViz Best Ball Show. My name is Colm Kelly. As you can see, I am joined by my partner in crime here on the Best Ball stream. It is Zachary Krueger, who you can follow on Twitter at ZK_FFB. We are delighted to be joined right now, live and in living color, by John Daigle, who you can follow at NotJDaigle. And of course, you can find all his work over at 4for4 and BetSperts. But John, I've been looking forward to getting some drafting with you, and the thumbnail here is a bit of fun. The title is a bit of fun, but I sent the title of the show, Forcing John Daigle to Draft a Zero Running Back Team, to John, which he said that we can try. I don't know how we're going to get on. How are we going to approach this draft today?
To be clear, I support pragmatic drafting, so I'm open to everything. You can't say that on Twitter because that requires black and white takes. There is no gray area on Twitter. But in this case, if I'm being forced to, that's fine. I will say the way I still prefer to draft, though, is essentially superhero RB. So making sure I have two strong RBs in the first 3 rounds, in particular for this tournament, for FFPC main event, for other large field top heavy payouts, because I understand the volatility and that wide receivers have higher floors, and it is harder to find the ceilings of running backs, even though running back ceilings are higher. It's just much more volatile. I understand that. But the whole point, again, of a $2 million tournament is to win it. And so I fully accept that I'm burning literally all my money when I enter Best Ball Mania 3, and I'm chasing getting that one iota of a player, one take correct, because I need, personally, in my opinion, I need that running back ceiling that's hard to find in order to win this tournament. And so that's the way I play it. I play it completely volatile, where either I'm winning it with these running back takes or I'm completely losing it. And so that's why I prefer robust superhero RB and this tournament in particular.
So we get Tom Strachan and he double dares us to go robust RB. So you might need to double dare John to do that. We'll see how it plays out. Then we get Jordan Brownson, basically extreme zero RB, no running backs to after the 12th round. So Zach, you are the man with the ability to make these picks. So you're the only man out of the 3 of us who can select who are actually drafting. Over the last 2 drafts, you have gone against me behind my back, drafted players that I don't want to draft. Have you arranged today with Daigle to get these superhero running backs onto the roster?
Yeah, well, Colm's problem has proven to be over the last couple of weeks that he doesn't like drafting good players, which has forced my hand into drafting the ones that are, more optimal and ones you want on your fantasy team. So we have gone against Colm a couple times. I know Devin Singletary is probably going to be brought up once or twice here as we get to that particular spot in the draft. But
Devin Singletary, you wanted to talk Scott Fishbowl roster, so I don't know if you've mine pulled up, but Singletary's on that. But let's hit whoever's roster you have up at the moment. I'll share it on the screen here, and it is NotJDaigle. John, you're a few rounds behind my draft and Zach's draft. I think Zach had a good experience drafted live in Buffalo for the start of the draft. I've done all mine online. You done yours remote in the woods camping. So how's this draft playing out for you so far?
I did admittedly get auto-picked for a couple, Deshaun Watson included, because I was literally in the Banff Mountains with no reception for 3 days straight. So you can't really help it in that case. That's why also our draft is only in the 9th round. Like, we're one of the slowest drafts because Hayden Winks is on Pacific time in California, and I was literally just like out of commission altogether. So I knew these drafts were going to be slow. But honestly, with the settings giving points for first down, especially for receivers, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, I consider to be possession receivers. I don't hate it. Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, since this league awards completion rate, I think is a perfectly fine tandem. It's not exactly what I was going for. I preferred rushing quarterbacks, but given where I was at 110 and they had all come off the board before, I didn't mind doing that, then taking a chance on Javonte Williams, trying to get a little Kirk Cousins stack going. I'll still probably get KJ Osborne later on, or even Irv Smith, since I don't have a tight end yet. So overall, like, given that I was auto-picked for a couple selections, I don't think it's that bad, honestly.
I love John said that this is the reason that the draft, he blames multiple people in his room. It's simply because there was no picks made by Daigle over the course of the entire draft.
That's it. Totally me.
Are we looking at you next, Zach, or me? How are we looking?
We'll go with you, and then we'll get my team pulled up here in just a second.
Yeah, so I went and got those hero wide receivers at the start of this draft with Jefferson, Kupp, Adams, and Samuel, then Hawkins and Matt Ryan. I think this has played out really well. Now, obviously, the running backs are going to need a little bit of work to patch through, but You mentioned Singletary. I have Singletary there, who I'm pretty much all in on this year. But Rashad White has obviously got nothing to do with Rashad White, but the Leonard Fournette news over the last couple of days may boost him. So going with a lot of backup options, and I think this roster gets a huge plus from Zach because it has Brian Robinson on it. Once you have Brian Robinson, that boosts the ranking for Zach. But yeah, I think we're into an interesting spot here. But you can start 7 wide receivers in the Scott Fish Bowl, and it looks like I'm going to be starting 7 most weeks here and be a little bit struggling at some of the other positions. But yeah, pretty happy so far.
I just want to say, too, your team in particular, the way these quarterbacks fell to you, like, you couldn't have asked for a better turnout. I think Matt Ryan went in about the 4th round of my draft. So literally every quarterback you have fell much later than where I got them. We'll see in a second here. I think I got Baker Mayfield in the 10th or 11th round even.
Yeah, I think this draft was interesting.
Very well.
People really went with the quarterbacks as you would expect in the opening 3-4 rounds and then let them ride. Sean Siegel, I think, took Mac Jones maybe in his draft in the 4th round or the 5th round. So yeah, there was a lot of values on the quarterback, which kind of saved me a little bit here. Zach, hit us with your board. Then we'll be jumping into a Best Ball Mania 3 draft after this to see how it goes. But yeah, looking here. How are you feeling, Zach, so far with the way things played out?
Yeah, so we did actually the first 8 rounds live in Buffalo. I made the trip up there for that. So that was an awesome experience. We had a lot of fun raising money for the Thurman Thomas Family Foundation. I actually had the same pick as Daigle did. So we both picked out of the 110. I got Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford to start out. He touched on the emphasis on points and awarding completion rate and percentage. So I went with 2 stud quarterbacks there. I feel really good about my wide receivers. Breece Hall, last I checked, getting him at the 703 is the latest that anybody in the tournament has gotten him. So that's kind of my badge of honor there. And then got a couple of RotoViz guys with the tight ends, and now we're just really kind of trying to hammer out running back after starting with five wide receivers through the first 8 picks. But overall, I feel good. I think it's kind of the RotoViz type team that I've been trying to build for the last several years of my life. So I like it right now. We'll see if it feels that way come playoff time, and if this team's making the playoff portion of the tournament.
Y'all are representing RotoViz properly with that build and Devin Singletary.
Yeah. That's right. That's all you need.
Together. Yeah.
Repping the brand. Yeah, but yeah, we are going to get ready to jump into the draft in just a couple of seconds. But what I want to say before is obviously the Scott Fish Bowl, amazing again this year. It's always tremendous. And we were just chatting before we started. Myself and Zach are heading up to the Fantasy Football Expo. It's my first time traveling over. John's heading up, so I'll get to meet up with John for the first time. But yeah, Scott Fish heading up. Have known Scott now. Have known John as well for a long time, but I'd say almost a decade of knowing Scott. So it's going to be cool to meet some of those people. But yeah, Scott Fish, the Scott Fish Bowl, remarkable what that has turned into over the last kind of 6 or so years. So amazing to be part of it once again. We are going to jump in here as we start off the stream. Drop a thumbs up on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the RotoViz podcast, the RotoViz video channel is what to say, but the RotoViz Best Ball Show also has its own podcast feed. All the best ball content we do gets posted up there. If you want to get this in just audio form, that would be much appreciated if you head on over and click on that subscribe button. But as we are diving into things, we will have a couple of seconds potentially before our first pick, and we're at the 103. So that potentially takes us into a little bit of non-zero RB territory. But John, are you willing for today to take one of those elite wide receiver options at pick 3 here, even if we have Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey available?
I will abide by the rules. I would not ever do that over Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, but I will abide by the rules you set.
So what we want to happen here is Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey go 1-2, and that would leave us that we have to take one of those wide receivers. In the interest of checking all the options, if both of those guys go, would you be taking somebody like Austin Eckler over the wide receivers if this was a John Daigle draft and we didn't have any sway over the matter?
No, I am willing to take Eckler over Jamar Chase, but I still have Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson next in line.
And who is the option if the 2 running backs go between Kupp and Jefferson?
It would be Kupp still, just because I think Kupp is still harder to get. So it's not even about, like, Justin Jefferson is my redraft wide receiver 1, but in this instance, you can still get Jefferson like at 1.5 in some cases. Cooper Kupp never goes there. So I still get Cooper Kupp wherever I can.
Yeah, by ADP, you're definitely spot on there. Luckily for us, it has played out perfectly. We get the 2 running backs off.
Luckily for you, so we could do this. Yeah.
So do you want to go with Kupp here at this option? Yeah.
Let's get Cup. Yep.
Yeah.
I have quite a bit of Jefferson and Chase. Do I have a lot of Chase? I don't know if I have a lot of Chase yet, but yeah, I have quite a bit of Cup and Jefferson. So I still just keep hammering it whenever they're there.
Yeah, and I know when people are watching these drafts with Peter Overzet a lot of the time as well, and there's a lot of talk of the Influencer 101. We haven't got the 101 many times, Zach, but we're certainly getting the 102 and the 103 a lot. So I feel like we have a lot of drafts where we're getting one of those top 3 wide receivers. It has been mainly Chase or Cup based on how the drafts have played out, but yeah, I would love to start adding that little bit extra of Justin Jefferson into those rosters. We do get a 4 wide receiver run here with Cup, Jefferson, Chase, and Diggs through those first 6 picks to go with Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. So interesting to see who is in the room, who's watching. Drop us a comment if you are drafting here. Let us know, especially if you're that. If you are at the 104 or 105, let us know so we can stop talking about who we want to pick before it gets to that pick. But John, we will be waiting for the options of who we may get at the 2-3 turn. But before we do that, I want to give you a second to give a shout out, a plug to the work you're doing over at 4 for 4. If you want to let the listeners know what you've got coming out, because it's always must read.
I am doing team previews right now, taking on that large goal for the first time ever, actually, all 32 by myself. So there are 7 out right now. There should be 8 with the AFC North and AFC West both completed by tonight. And then NFC East should be up by the end of the week. So there will be 12 by the end of the week. Right now, also at 4 for 4, there is the early bird discount where you get 10% off if you sign up before August. And our projections, my best ball tiers are up. I did an initial edit of them last week before I left, but I need to do it again, and we'll be doing it weekly, if not daily, through August as well. So pretty much everything you would want and think that comes from 4for4.com, it's all there right now. And team previews will continue rolling out. And then after that, in a couple of weeks, I'll end up getting to like Daigle's guys, my article, who I'm drafting, my top 20 fade players, items of that. So it's a good time to get ahead and get the sub.
Who knows, maybe when we're talking through today's draft, some of the players that I'm trying to get used to pick will end up on that top 20 players to fade list. We'll see how that goes. Just whoever I say to pick today, fade them. That's the way to go moving forward. But we do have Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook, CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon. Swift's ADP really moving up over the last couple of weeks. Some of these running backs are being moved up, and I think we're going to start to see that even increase with the likes of Saquon. I think we'll see him continue to move up. And you mentioned Breece Hall earlier, Zach, on your roster. I think we'll start to probably see him move up even more as camp goes on. Mike Evans goes off the board. So we are kind of 4 picks away. Who are some of the options you would like to see here, Daigle? My favorite guys are usually the T. Higgins, AJ Brown crop to try and pair 2 of those together. But how are you feeling here? And you can talk about running backs if you wish, but we're going to try and avoid them.
Yeah, T. Higgins, AJ Brown, Michael Pittman. I have actually ranked 1 spot ahead of AJ Brown. Michael Pittman, of course, was the wide receiver 7 in fantasy last year through week 9. That's when Carson Wentz had a top 6 EPA until Carson Wentz became Carson Wentz again. I've also been drafting in this case. In this scenario, I've usually been leaving the 3rd round with one or the other between Leonard Fournette and James Conner. That's kind of like my workhorse running back, my adjusted 0 RB, or I guess that'd be modified RB. But if we're going to be skipping there, then yeah, I don't mind 1 or 2 of the wide receivers. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes Mark Andrews tends to fall, and so I'll look to him as well. You can still get Darren Waller or George Kittle in the 5th round, which is what I typically do, try to get one of those top 5 tight ends. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now with this pick.
Yeah, I think I would agree with a lot of that. So we are 1 pick away. We're going to have some of those options available. Barkley and Aaron Jones go off the board. So we have T. Higgins here as an option. We have Javonte Williams, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Michael Pittman. AJ Brown would obviously be an option too to see how things play out. But with ADP, do we feel that Higgins is the pick here, and then we see if we can get Pittman or Brown in the 3rd round?
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. I don't think I'm as high as T. Higgins as RotoViz is, but that's okay. Who is? No one ever is.
We can blame Sean Siegel. We should be taking him at the back end of the 1st round.
And their last 16 games together. In their last 16 games together, T. Higgins actually does have just 6 fewer targets than Jamar Chase. Pretty much has held his own since he returned from injury in week 5.
Yeah, so I do think that that's part of it, and this offense is going to continue to ascend. We've seen what happened last year, but there is portions where game script and the passing rate wasn't that favorable, and we would like to see that happen a little bit more. So it could improve this year. So when we look at how things have played out so far since that pick, just one pick, Nick Chubb, we'll see what happens here over the course of the next pick. We get Leonard Fournette. We will talk about it in a moment, but we got a question on Fournette, but we also got Daigle Lopez, and it's a live RV draft. So we do a lot. I post a lot of these in hindsight. Myself and Sean will do some drafts, but myself and Zach have been doing these live drafts each and every Tuesday with a guest. We have some great guests coming up over the next couple of weeks, so make sure you're subscribed to get those as they come out. The aforementioned one we may miss is going to be, we're going to have to decide, Zach, what we're doing Expo week when I'm over in Washington. So we'll see how things play out. We're one pick away. AJ Brown goes off. I haven't been drafting Michael Pittman very much. This is an opportunity to get him on the roster if you want to go that way, Daigle.
Well, since it's nitpicking, I have them all in the same tier, and we already have Cooper Kupp. We're just going to do like an easy week 17 stack here. Just go Mike Williams. Again, they're literally both in the same tier, so it's just nitpicking. Even though I have Pittman ranked higher, it doesn't matter.
I was being the gentleman, being polite, letting you have the way. But Zach, we wanted Mike Williams there.
Yeah, that's why I had him in there. That's honestly why I had Javonte Williams in there too. A very marginal slide based on his ADP right now. He'll probably be off the board in another pick or two. But both Denver and Chargers are correlated with the Rams. The other one to maybe keep an eye out for later on down the line is going to be Colm's Green Bay Packers in Week 15 for a little bit of playoff correlation there, depending on how deep we want to run it. But there's just a couple things I'm kind of looking at as I build out the queue, and then obviously there's going to be good players who we can take, to start off other correlated weeks in the postseason, but the Mike Williams play I think was obviously the right decision there, just based on the already having had Cooper Kupp rostered.
I have not been drafting Javonte Williams much, and the Denver preview actually is free for everyone. It's the only one we didn't put behind the paywall, and I even wrote in there that for obvious reasons, right? Javonte Williams still has to usurp Melvin Gordon, but at the same time, I wrote in the preview too, I have been taking, pop a shot chances here and there because I do understand Javonte's profile. And if it all comes together and he's awarded the role, like he is a league winning player that you can get, sometimes in the fourth round. So I haven't been taking much of it admittedly because people are still very high on his ADP and drafting him for his ceiling essentially. But at the same time, like I understand, I get it.
And we really like the profile, obviously, at RotoViz, and, I like him as a player. But when we get into those rounds later on, we're looking at some zero RB options. I think Melvin Gordon could end up being one of the better ones off those. Like, he was so much better last year than I anticipated, and him and Williams split a lot of time. So I think we could see potentially similar things happening this year. But when I'm looking at those running back profiles later in the draft, I'm looking at the gaps in ADP, and if the starter unfortunately goes down or something happens, how much value you're gaining from that second running back. So yeah, Gordon is kind of leaning to be my target in that backfield at the moment. We do get a question though on Leonard Fournette in terms of the news being concerning. I hadn't been drafting Leonard Fournette at all. You mentioned trying to get some of those hero running backs. I don't know if he would fit into that based on being in that offense. The amount of work he got last year wasn't hugely efficient, but obviously got a huge amount of volume and turned that into a huge amount of fantasy points. Have you changed your approach there? Have you been drafting him, John? And moving forward, are you concerned about the potential way?
He was literally more important than Tom Brady after they returned from their bye. Like, he was the engine of that entire offense, and not just for the 4-touchdown Colts game where they had no choice but to run against zone defense. He averaged 20.5 touches, 7.5 targets, and an 18.5% target share in 5 games prior to his injury. And the issue with Rachaad White is that, like, everyone assumes he's going to have passing downs. I don't think so. I think Leonard Fournette is still the better passing down option, as proven so the past couple of seasons. But also, like, if you look at the tape gurus, like Dane Brugler, for instance, he noted in The Beast that Rachaad White's weakness is actually pass protection. And that's where he may not be able to get on the field in the NFL. And so if that's the case, like, I just assume that Tom Brady won't end up trusting him in his rookie year. And Rachaad White, I guess, if he were treated like Alexander Madison, that'd be okay, right? Like someone we love as a direct backup, but he's still going essentially 2-3 rounds higher than Alexander Madison. And so he's not being drafted as a direct backup. And so I have not been taking him for that reason a lot.
Yeah, at some point I'm going to get burned again on passing up on Leonard Fournette. Last year was Rojo, back on the Rojo bandwagon this year, but he's no longer with the Buccaneers. But I think it's an interesting situation to see how it plays out. But all the concerns you had there would still be concerns for me, even though I am drafting White this year. I got accused in the last round of shoving Higgins down Daigle's throat. So, Daigle, who are the preferred options for you here as we're one pick away?
I am looking at the current players. I like Allen Robinson. Let's see. The running back. Oh, I like George. Well, let's go Allen Robinson here, actually.
If you want, let's go. I'll go George Kittle if you want to go Kittle.
Let's go Allen Robinson. Let's keep on hammering here because we don't necessarily need, just like DFS. I know best ball tournaments are completely different than DFS, but like DFS, the way you strategically play, especially like the way I play, is mid to high stakes, single entry to 3 entry tournaments. And really what you do is you team stack without a quarterback and then game stack. And in this case, it gives us outs because we don't necessarily need to add Matthew Stafford. Like essentially having Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson is a team stack I'm fine with because we think they're going to get there anyways, whether Matthew Stafford gets there. So this gives us outs here. But
it also meant that we had to draft Allen Robinson.
There's nothing wrong with drafting Allen Robinson. I
have concerns about last year, basically, like he just like hung up his cleats and decided that he wasn't going to play. It'll be interesting to see if he can bounce back. You know, he didn't set out the season, but I don't know, may as well have set out part of the season.
He was checked out, and rightfully so. You know, they tried to get an extension done for 2 years, and the Bears never met him in the middle. So he was checked out before the year. They used him improperly. Like his set of routes he used last year was completely different than what he's used in his entire career. It was a bad spot to begin with. So I'm ignoring all of that last year, honestly, and I'm still just drafting him very high.
So we have a couple of different options here for 20 seconds. We have Kittle still available, Lamar Jackson, DK Metcalf, Rashad Bateman. They're probably some of my favorite options here. Anyone else for you, Daigle? 10 seconds to go.
I like Kittle here.
Yeah,
let's go.
If Kittle was not here, I'd say Lamar Jackson. I like being ahead of the curve on Lamar Jackson over Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. But yes, since Kittle's here, I think this is actually what is this? It's the 5th round. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't like missing out. Oh, Kyle Pitts in the 4th is actually good ADP. I don't like missing out on this top 5 range because even in liking Dalton Schultz, even at ADP, I think there's a significant cliff drop off. And so I still want to be high on one of these top 5 guys.
Sounds like you don't have TJ Hawkinson in that top 6, no?
Absolutely not. No. I do.
Oh no.
I do still love Hawkins's profile, but for his career, he's been more of a floor player. I'm also lower on the Lions' offensive production than a lot of people just because they still don't have a quarterback. Last year, Hawkinson actually had career highs in targets per game, target share, and catch rate from Jared Goff. But also, he was more of a floor option and that he had 4 top 5 performances and 3 finishes outside the top 30. So it basically came down to touchdowns for him, and that's it. And if we're just banking on touchdowns, I'd rather just wait till the very end, honestly, rather than reach for that middling dead zone since he still finishes just the tight end 15 in points per game.
Yeah, there is like the case that he is playing with the Lions and that they aren't a good offense, but I think that some of these offenses who aren't great are going to improve. The Lions have improved their core of wide receivers significantly. Swift missed a lot of time down the stretch as well as Hawkinson in those games where they really were a little bit of a tire fire, but we'll see how it plays out. I like it in Kittle there. The other thing I was going to say is, I think that there's a misprice in usually the 5th tight end that goes. So if it's, Waller or Kittle, depending on how it goes in the drafts, I usually think they're the gap between those guys. And then the gap, you mentioned Kyle Pitts, between him and Mark Andrews. Like I love Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, but to get a 2-round ADP dip on Pitts versus Andrews, I think is a steal there. So like getting this build to add in that elite tight end. And we haven't drafted George Kittle because it has been a lot of Dalton Schultz or Zach gets his way. It's been a lot of TJ Hawkinson if I get my way. And the other thing I was going to mention is getting Allen Robinson on the roster. I kind of hinted at I haven't been drafting a lot of Allen Robinson, but when you're getting him as a wide receiver 4 on your roster, I think that's the place to take him. My concern with somebody like Robinson is if you have started with, say, 3 running backs or 2 running backs and he's your wide receiver 1 or 2, that's where I get a little bit skeptical about his range of outcomes in 2022. We're starting to wrap back around some of the players that have gone off the board since George Kittle. is Juju Smith-Schuster. We have DK Metcalf, Brandon Cooks, Lamar Jackson, as you mentioned. Zach changes the screen, so I no longer can see the players who went off the board in the meantime. But the last 2 picks have been Amari Cooper and Elijah Mitchell. Then we have Devontae Smith. So starting to come back around. Who are some of the options, Zach? I'll let you go here that you want to make the pitch for.
So the one thing I think we need to just kind of bear in mind, after we make our next 2 picks, we're not on the clock until pick 94. So if we wanted to get Stafford or someone else stacked with our wide receivers, there might be a reach in order for Stafford in order to make that happen. So I went ahead and queued him up. Joe Burrow is obviously a little bit more palatable at ADP. And then I think Russell Gage is nice. There's a correlation there, I believe, with him and T. Higgins and Cincinnati during the playoff week. So I thought he was interesting. Outside of that, I'm kind of open to whatever you guys are maybe thinking. Daigle, do you have anything else in mind?
We're now in that dead zone of RBs where I think we can pretty much ignore them. So that's at least easy. Let's see quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think the 2 options I'd be looking at would be Joe Burrow and Trey Lance at this point.
Yeah, that would be the other
I think since we have T. Higgins, that kind of makes the decision for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to go Burrow. Yeah,
Bills week 17. I'm not sure where we're gonna get there, but we'll figure that out later.
We might get Krueger at some point. We'll see.
I've still been drafting Isaiah McKenzie. They swapped first team reps at OTAs, so I still think Isaiah McKenzie goes in the last round is still a fine pick.
So we do take that. We will be back on the clock in 3 picks from now. I'm probably waiting to hold off on quarterback and see if anyone does fall to us, unless you could go Lance, but I don't really want to invest as much as that in the 2 quarterbacks really. But who are some of the non-quarterback options? We're kind of into the running backs here.
Sorry to cut you off. So in this range, I have been taking, I actually don't mind Drake London or Hunter Renfrow in leagues where I don't draft Darren Waller and Kyle Pitts, because that's our hedge, right? For the Falcons especially, only one, in my opinion, can get there. That offense isn't good enough to support 2 to be top 5 or top 10 ADP at their position, and we expect it to be Kyle Pitts. So where we don't have Kyle Pitts, we hedge and draft Drake London around this range. At the same time, Hunter Renfrow last year was successful, maybe not only because Darren Waller was injured, but we know he averaged 7 catches and 80 yards and 17.5 fantasy points in 7 starts where Darren Waller was injured or inactive. And then the other games with Darren Waller, 5.5 catches, 48 yards, just 13 fantasy points. So again, that's my hedge in leagues where I don't get one of those 2 tight ends.
Yeah. So then we do miss out just on London. So Renfrow, be any concern with having Adams there? We are obviously ticking down on the clock. One other option would be if you went with Schultz and get your 2 tight ends and leave it at a 2 tight end build. But we have 15 seconds left. Daigle, you're the guest. You make the call here.
Having Kittle at such high equity, let's go ahead and draft Renfrow.
Yeah.
But having Kittle at such high equity, I think we just need to bank on him being a top 5 guy. And I'm fine with that. He hasn't finished any lower than tight end 4 in points per game. And he's also led his position in yards per route run and every year since 2018. I still think people are not understanding the floor he offers you as a top 5 option, which is why he should be in the same tier as Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, because I do not expect him to fall out since he's proven he won't fall out.
The other part I was going to say there is this is the range for people who have watched our previous drafts that we're usually going the Schultz-Hawkinson route. That's if we had passed obviously on Kelce and maybe take a Metcalf for that there. So that's where me and Sean talk a lot in our drafts about drafting from back to front. And I've done this with Zach in the past, where you need to know who's going to be there in those other rounds as we move forward. So now we have an elite tight end, we have an elite quarterback. We have at this point 5 wide receivers. But the reason I think it's so important there to get somebody like a Renfrow, even though he's not my favorite guy and he obviously will have more target competition this year, when we get back to this next 8-9 turn, and particularly the 10-11 turn, this is the next 4. We could potentially be going 4 running backs in the next 4 picks, depending on how this draft plays out. Maybe another quarterback sprinkled in there as well. So important to know what we're going to be hitting as we move forward. As we look at the roster, show us the full roster, Zach, for 1 second. I want to get Daigle's thoughts here and see how he's feeling. So we have Joe Burrow, we have Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, and George Kittle. How are you feeling so far with obviously 0 running backs, but the depth that we've built at the other positions?
You're right. There is no running backs, but
there are
we also,
0 running back. It's literally has.
We also backdoored Hunter Renfrow, George Kittle, week 17 stack, so that's okay. We have Burrow again. We're going to try to add Bills on later. So yeah, I think it's correlated just fine. I will also remind everyone that with 0 RB in top heavy tournaments, at least, like we're still drafting 5 running backs, maybe 6 running backs, assuming they hit. Like we have to assume our shitty picks we're about to make are going to hit, because that's the whole point. If they don't hit, we don't have a chance anyway. So we have to pretend like the next 4 or 5 running backs we get actually do come through. That's the way we draft 0 RB.
They are, obviously. They're all going to hit.
They're all going to hit.
We never make
easy.
mistakes. Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, that is obviously the goal here over these next couple of rounds. And based on how we've started off and how extreme we have gone with that 0 RB build, we're probably looking at 5 to 6 running backs at least with this build. We'll see how it plays out. Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes off the board. Miles Sanders goes off the board. Me and Zach have drafted some of those guys ourselves at times, but very rarely, because they feel to me like they're just in that dead zone area. Some of the options that are going to be available to us. We also, though, will have more wide receiver options. We do not have to go running back here, but Daigle, it is the first sign of oxygen if you want to get a running back. My guy here is Devin Singletary. We're 1 pick away. We may lose out on him, but we don't lose out on him. We have Rashad Penny. But is there anyone else there that you would be pitching as a running back, or do you want to continue this wide receiver onslaught?
Well, I kind of like Stafford and just closing the loop here too. I didn't expect to get him back here, but he's at ADP. He's 94. So I think I prefer to close the stacking loop here.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're the guest. There you go.
Yeah. Well,
this is an ongoing bet. I love talking to Zach and being like, there's this bet happening. He's like, why do we keep saying that? And I'm like, it'll just keep happening. But we haven't drafted Devin Singletary in like the last 5 of these drafts, and he's been there every time. So we've got Tony Pollard in drafts. We've got Miles Sanders in drafts. If he comes back to us, are we taking him?
Oh,
why does everyone hate Devin?
I know that's how I feel too. This is a weekly feeling for me, John. It's okay.
I guess half PPR. We don't expect Singletary to have the pass catching role.
Yeah.
It's totally fine, but like God, and Bills are obviously going to score so much more than Seattle. But if we're talking profile wise, like Ken Walker stands out significantly more.
I'll take Ken Walker. I'll take either.
I would rather have Ken Walker a few spots ahead of ADP. It's not even a full round than Devin Singletary.
Any push for Melvin Gordon with just some of the correlations we'd have going on there at all, or would we still go Ken Walker over them?
I think
would Melvin Gordon come back? That's my only argument.
There's a chance of that happening. Would be my thought. He may not, but there is a chance.
Yeah, so, it's unlikely, but we can. So you want to do Walker here? I love Kenneth Walker, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, at least he has like the RB1 profile in the instance Rashad Penny doesn't hold up. I'd rather take a chance on that.
Yeah,
the one thing I'm enjoying with these streams is it is the one way that my Devin Singletary exposure is getting lowered, because it is too high. And neither of these guys have any faith in the season working out for him. So we'll see how it plays. But the goal would be that Garden does get back. I'm happy. I am taking shots at Penny, obviously. I'm taking shots at Walker, depending who's there. I mentioned, obviously, really liking Singletary. I am drafting James Cook as well. My take has always been that this is a very explosive offense, and the running backs have really never hit their true potential when that's Zach Moss and Singletary. Singletary did it down the stretch last year. There is going to be a little bit of regression where rather than Josh Allen rushing it in, each and every time from the 2-yard line, we're going to see the running backs push them in. So I think that the running backs for Buffalo are being undervalued this season yet again. So we'll see how it plays out, but happy to get Ken Walker there. How are you feeling about the Penny versus Walker split in that backfield? Both running backs go in within 5 picks of each other here, and that tends to be the way in most of these drafts.
I do think it's a split, but I also think, Rashad Penny has shown us he's injury prone in his first 4 years in the league. We will always have those last 5 games where he won us our leagues, but nonetheless, I don't really worry about Penny since he's never held off competition his entire career. I would rather take a chance on Ken Walker. I do expect him to open in a timeshare, but I think Walker eventually emerges.
We are definitely getting a little bit of Denny's field in here. So we get Willis Awesomson, love the wide receivers, a little bit worried about the running backs. And then we get Daigle saying wide receivers are very strong, running backs a little weak. So we have to agree with that. We do have one running back. We probably have to agree with that take. We do get a note in here hoping that Stafford's elbow holds up. He did tail off a little bit down the stretch last season. He was also buoyed by a historic season by Cooper Kupp. Any concerns with Stafford? I know he's our QB2 here, but Any concerns entering 2022, John?
Well, the concern is in the Rams offense. Like to lead the league with an 80% passing touchdown rate, we expect that to regress heavily. That's also an argument for Cam Akers, who I think could be a top 10 back, honestly. People may be confusing Saquon Barkley and Cam Akers at ADP, honestly, especially because everyone's citing Cam Akers for the timeshare he had last year, even though we all know he's injured. We all know he fumbled one time at Florida State in college. Fumbling's not his issue, and he still fumbled last year. 2.4 yards per carry is not going to hold up. That's not what he showed as a rookie whenever he was finally handed the ball from week 14 on in his first season. Also last year, whenever a back was healthy, whenever a back did not leave the game, Rams running backs, that starter handled at least 80% of the team's backfield touches. Sean McVay doesn't want to use a timeshare. He wants his back to be healthy. And if Cam Akers is healthy, like that's honestly a top 12 guy. So I've been leaning on Cam Akers a lot, thinking that the Rams passing offense does regress. But at the same time, it's Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. Like, we're going to be fine. And also, Stafford, as you said, is our QB2. We're really banking on Burrow or mixed tweaks more than anything.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But a little bit of concern down the stretch, but also, we don't know what you mentioned. Akers is injured. You don't know what's going on with some of these players in the NFL in terms of how banged up they actually are. We are back on the clock. We have some options here. We talked a little bit about Fournette earlier. We have an option here to get Rashad White. Some of the other options that are available to us will be Rondell Moore. We have 17 seconds left. So basically, whoever Daigle picks is who we're going to take.
You can start Rondell Moore. Look at running backs again.
I'm sorry. I got to find Rondell Moore.
He's at the top.
Yeah, we're moving slow. All right.
Move it. We have a pick somebody. You do it, Zach. Take Rashad White.
I'm doing Rashad White. All right.
Oh, God.
Sorry. Is that okay? Is that okay? Or is that Daigle already?
No. I was still looking. So you're. I was looking. So you're good. No big deal.
Yeah. I was going to Christian Watson goes off 2 picks later. I'm a Packers fan, but I'm probably not drafting much of the Packers this year so far. But looking here at the options, I thought Rondell Moore might get back. I didn't think Rashad White would get back. We are 1 pick away. Moore might be an option. Was there anyone else you were going to pitch for there? The players that went in between?
Alexander Madison was the only option.
Okay. So we have 2 options here either way. And do you have a pitch both of them available? Do you want to go with one versus the other?
I guess our receivers are so strong so far. We don't really need to worry about Rondell Moore. So I'm fine going Alexander Madison. All right, again, we're banking on strictly upside here, and we know he has a 3-down role if Dalvin Cook were injured or suspended. So.
And I'm given a lot of wiggle room here. We've gone 3 running backs in a row too, John. John was a sport, went with 8 rounds, I believe, into 9th round before we get that running back. So I think, and John kind of touched on it as well, we are going to nail running back here for quite some time. Mm-hmm. Very tempting for me there to go with Rondell Moore, but yeah, I think we're starting to build a fun team, and you do need to have the more upside shots we get here at running back to have 3-down roles is really what we're looking for. So we'll see how it plays out. Feeling much better, John, after getting Walker, White, and Madison. And I pushed the White pick because I thought we were going to tie him out there and get Watson, who I didn't really feel we would add to this roster. So would White have been skipped over? And maybe he was skipped over for Madison. If we get White back, would you have taken him then in the 11th round?
In the 11th round, yes, but he doesn't ever make the 11th round, right? So it's fine. I don't have much Rashad White at all, so I don't mind getting him on a couple teams.
Yeah, so I think we're building out a pretty fun team. When we're going through these rounds from round 10 on, there's probably realistically 15 targets of running backs that we're hoping to get. We've got 3 of those at this point, so I think we're in a pretty good spot in terms of getting some of these 0 RB targets. People always ask who Sean's 0 RB list is going to be. I always say listen to who we're drafting when we get to this point of drafts. There's usually a good crossover in that. But we're starting to get to the point now in round 12 where we will be looking out for running backs, but also building out some of the other positions. We are in a 2 quarterback build. We're done a quarterback. We have 1 tight end in George Kittle. Have you? Are we looking here if we can to make it a 2 tight end, 2 quarterback build, and then fill out the rest at wide receiver and running back, or do you want to push for a 3 tight end build depending on who we get at the second option?
With George Kittle, one of the top 5 guys, I typically make it only 2 tight end. In this case, I think 2 tight end, 2 quarterback is just fine, and then we can use the rest of the picks on running back or wide receiver.
Yeah, so we'll see who starts to play. As we took our pick, we took Madison. We get Irv Smith, Rondell Moore off the board, Pierce, Cole Kmet. Josh Palmer, Pat Fairmouth, Landry, Isaiah Spiller. Then we get KJ Osborne, Albert Okwuegbunam, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, Jalen Tolbert. So a couple of rookie wide receivers. Then we get Davis. So we're 4 picks away. What you do find in this, and I know it can be very nerve-wracking if people aren't doing 0 RB drafts, but what tends to happen in this portion is people are taking those wide receivers. And what you tend to see is maybe you take one of your options like we talked about earlier and Stafford come back to us in those zones where that player comes back. So we are 3 picks away. We have nobody in the queue as of yet, but we'll let John, we do actually have people in the queue. Zach, hit us with who and why these people are in the queue.
Daryl Henderson definitely continues the Rams correlation. Crowder, it's just the Buffalo-Cincinnati correlation, although I'm expecting Daigle will probably be still more partial to McKenzie as a potential value later on. Michael Carter, I love the Jets playoff schedule, and then I think we do need to get a tight end with one of these next 2 picks. So I threw a few guys in there. Tunyon would have a correlation with our build, so would Everett. Hunter Henry's kind of the naked guy, I think, out there. I don't think there'd be any correlation there, but I like what he did last season. I think there's a potential for more targets this year and year 2 of Mac Jones. We have 25 seconds. Daigle, where are we leaning?
Oh, I would go either Jameson Crowder or Michael Carter.
Okay.
We can wait on tight end for the next round, especially with Mike Gesicki still there.
Colm?
I'll let you go. You pick.
All right. Let's do Michael Carter just because Daigle did tout McKenzie. Let's see.
I love Michael Carter.
Yeah, I do.
I think for a build like this, it's really optimal. I'm all in on Breece Hall, but when we're getting again talking about the big gaps in ADP between these running backs, I think that's a smart play. And Carter did look pretty good last season as well. So I think based on getting a 4th running back in there makes a lot of sense. Do like the option to get Crowder where I can, but I also agree that at this point on this turn, I probably would be leaning into one of the tight ends. But the one that I will say that is my favorite of this bunch is Gerald Everett. How do you feel about the tight ends? Gesicki's still there also.
Yeah, well, I like all of them. I like Everett and Tunyon over Henry. Let's see here.
Everett goes.
Gosh,
Gesicki's fine just as a
Jameson Crowder's gone as well.
As a guy to have.
We do have Packers correlation for Tunyon. I like Devontae Parker or Tunyon. Y'all pick.
You go, Zach.
Man, we have no Devontae Parker. Let's go to Tunyon. Well, yeah, let's go to Tunyon. I was going to say maybe not because I think there's a little bit of concern with his injury, but hopefully, assuming Kittle makes it through training camp and all that and he's playing, we won't need Tunyon even if he's not back right away. So that's, another bet on Kittle being successful and panning out early on, and hopefully Tunyon will be back and ready to go soon after.
And as you're seeing, 49ers buys until week 9. So, yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah, we have time.
I was getting to thinking there too, with the Gesicki option, but it was looking, obviously, when it got to the Gerald Everett pick, there was a lot of tight end options available. I was thinking about, let's see what comes back to us in the next round. But my concern with Tunyon is that maybe he isn't healthy, but as you mentioned, a lot of this is going to be pinned on George Kittle. So hopefully by week 8, week 9, Tunyon is back in play. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of red zone opportunities for Tunyon if he is healthy, because, we obviously know that Devontae Adams isn't there anymore. So it's going to get spread around. And if it gets spread around, even 25% of those targets going the way of Tunyon is going to be a big deal for him. We do know that he has relied historically on touchdowns though as well, but as a tight end too, I think it's interesting. We'll see how it kind of plays out. The advantage of having a second tight end at this point is you don't have to force tight end, and it gives you those options. Maybe somebody does come to us at a point and we decide that that's the way to go, but feels like that's that wrapped up. We've now got, Zach, if you pull up the roster, we'll do a full run through. We'll check then for our position allocation. So we have 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs. We have the 2 tight ends and 5 wide receivers with Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Ken Walker, Rashad White, Alexander Mattison, Michael Carter, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, and then George Kittle and Robert Tunyon. So we're pretty, we're not, the running backs aren't going to be our key here, but we are pretty balanced across the board based on the roster construction. We do have, at this point, 5 picks left, I believe. How are we feeling now, John? Which way do you want to start to play it? I think we can kind of go any direction from here, see which best player available is.
Yeah, we even have leniency for a third tight end if we wanted. I don't think we need to. If we had waited for the Everett range and the Tunyon range to draft our first one. I usually go 3, even 4 sometimes, since it is the most volatile position. And I don't like assuming that like the Evan Ingrams, all these guys come through, since like they're in this range for a reason. But since we did get George Kittle, we're going to probably bank on 2. And so running back or wide receiver, let's just play it out and see who's up on the board for us.
So we do have something coming in here from Bollock, John, that says this might be the best stream you've seen Daigle draft on stream so far this year. So
to be fair, the Best Ball Happy Hour at 6 p.m. Eastern every Thursday with Ian Harditz and Hayden Winks. I typically play host. Like I take a back seat and I don't argue with the pick. I'll argue some picks, but I typically just, like you, Colm, I just sit back and allow the guest to always pick.
Yeah, as long as I get no running backs through 8 rounds, I'm willing to sit back and let the guest pick then at that point.
Just such a disgrace.
Yeah. He always also mentions that Tunyon and half-point PPR is a nice bet there. So we'll see how that plays out. We're back on the clock.
We have nobody in the queue, so let's roll.
I like old man Marvin Jones.
Okay. What about Marlon Mack?
Like, I guess I'm okay with Marlon Mack. I think I'd rather collect Khalil Herbert personally.
We're getting Marvin Jones, it looks like. Take Khalil Herbert if we can.
I did the quick slide.
Nice work. Nice and quick.
Thank you.
Really thinking on your feet there, too, or on your fingers.
Don't hate on 100-target Marvin Jones.
If you had to click,
okay.
I like Marvin Jones. I've drafted. I think I was looking at my player rostership the other day, and he was one of my higher drafted wide receivers, which either says a lot of good things about me, possibly, or a lot of bad things about me. He's
the lone. He's basically Frank Gore of wide receivers, except that production, 100 targets and a profile touchdown score, is much better for us than Frank Gore.
We're right back.
AJ Hamler, Will Fuller, Julio Jones. They're the only options.
I'm putting Hamler in there.
Let's go on. I guess. Oh God, Jamal Williams or Julio Jones for me.
Let's go Julio then.
Let's do Julio. We don't have
the argument, since we need more Packers correlation, is that Julio signs with the Packers. That's the argument here.
He signed for the Packers on a $100,000 a year deal because
I don't even like Julio Jones. Like, I have not been drafting him at all, but for this team, it's fine because our top 6 receivers are just fine.
I can draft more Julio than I can Will Fuller. There's the fact that we haven't heard anything about Will Fuller at all, is wildly discouraging for me. We haven't heard much about Julio Jones either, but I feel like there's a chance we will.
I think the rumor is that what I heard was that the Packers reached out and then Will Fuller turned them down for a tryout because he doesn't want to play in the cold, which is weird because he played in the cold at Notre Dame like his entire career. But that's the rumor I've heard.
That's something that myself and Sean have talked about on a couple of RotoViz overtimes recently when we're drafting, is those two guys are going at the exact same place, and Sean is very much on the Will Fuller side. I'm on the Julio Jones side, and I just have a lot of concerns around, does Will Fuller want to play? And I think Julio does want to play, and I think he's going to hold out until he's getting a shot with a team who's going to be a contender. And there's a few interesting situations around the league where Julio would instantly go in and get targets, but I think that if he signs with the roster in August, I think that he's going in the 13th, 12th round, possibly even higher. So that's what I'm looking at.
It is worrisome though that we're expecting him to sign in August or September. That's not good for a veteran who has not been good for a couple of years now.
So we'll see, but it could be the pick that helps us win. But maybe, who knows? Maybe Sammy Watkins, who goes one pick after, is the difference maker. We get into a very flat range there, and that's why usually if I'm drafting solo, I'd probably go Hamler there. But Hamler has so much competition for targets on that roster, also working his way back from an injury. But that 14th, 15th round becomes quite flat. Gainwell would have been my pick if he had lasted one more pick. I was very disappointed to see him go off the board there. So we are into the final 3 picks. We balanced that out with 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and Bollock has bounced back in. I want to share this one because we made the joke a minute ago about the best team, but he also said that the best ball happy hours are awesome. So definitely people should be checking those out with Hayden. Ian,
I know he was joking too, because Bollock is always in the chats. I always see him. I recognize the same names over and over again.
Yeah, and I'm always very conscious too. There is sometimes things coming in the chats, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to share that. But when I know it's a joke, we have some fun with it. Another one here that Fuller could play in Tampa. Now that would be very, very interesting. He wouldn't have his weather concerns there, but we are ready to fill out the last 3 spots of what we hope will be a successful team this year. Daigle, you said that you are putting, your exposure in here, that we're going to win it, where that is the key. So are we going solely on upshots here, like lottery tickets that you think can maximize their, and then KJ Hamler goes off the board. He's one of my lottery tickets. What's your thoughts in the last 3 rounds? I
still want to go wide receiver here. I honestly think that the 5 running backs we have are fine if we wanted to go that direction. I don't mind adding a 6, but I would like to look at wide receiver.
Let's go ahead and just pull it up here. Colm knows I put Brian Robinson in there, obviously. Daigle, here's some wide receivers. Anyone who's standing out to you that's not in the queue?
Wendell. I love the way I think Zach has a list of the players that I do like and just leaves them out of the queue on purpose.
I don't mind Wandell.
So you add him to the queue when John says his name. That's interesting.
Who do you want here?
I do prefer Kendrick. I prefer Kendrick Bourne anyways.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Kendrick Bourne.
We have McKenzie if you want to put him in there. We probably can get him in the next round though.
I think we can. Well, we're talking about it, but I think we can get him in the next round.
Yeah. The
if you're in the chat, do not draft Isaiah McKenzie. That is the rule as we get.
I think this FU Troll Me has drafted a few of our players at the top of our queue. I think they're definitely in there literally watching us. That is not the first time I've seen a player at the top of our queue go. Kenneth Gainwell was another one who I saw go. So I think they're just pulling players off of our queue. But I do like Bourne there.
The argument for Kendrick Bourne is that he had more top 12 finishes, so more wide receiver 1 weeks than the rest of the Patriots receivers combined last year. He was actually good.
Yeah.
And you can get him in this range.
Do we want McKenzie here?
We absolutely want McKenzie here.
All right, let's get McKenzie here.
And just pitch back to all positions just to see what other options are in the queue, or just draft him and ignore what I was saying, but that's okay.
Here's who's up. We had already agreed on this.
I love the way he takes the pick and then shows who's available. Yeah, that was the pick. That was the pick. I think the Patriots they're just always a little bit ambiguous. The backfield's always ambiguous. There's always a little bit of a challenge. But I think this year, heading into year 2, I think Mac Jones will take that step forward. And I think this offense could put up a lot more points than maybe consensus is expecting. But it's going to be hard to know, John, which way it goes. So you mentioned Bourne there. We obviously have a couple of other options that could be intriguing. Parker was somebody we talked about a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think we're in a nice spot. We have freedom in the last round to play about, decide which way we want to go. How are you feeling, Zach, about the roster at this point?
I really like the way this is kind of shaping up. I think ultimately some of the goals that we had laid out in the early rounds, we've more or less accomplished with some semblance of a player from the teams that we needed. And the nice thing too is that some of those players, while they're maybe not star-studded players on said teams, we know that they're capable of pulling off that big week when we need it the most, particularly in the tournament format. So guys like McKenzie, guys like Kendrick Bourne, I think are great. I like Hunter Renfrow. I really like the way this team is correlated overall. We ultimately accomplished that. Just for reference real quick, we have 2 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 8 receivers, and 2 tight ends. Given the strength of our wide receivers, I think I'd probably be leaning one more running back here to close things out. Is that something that you guys are open to? Do we want that 9th receiver? I'd have to dig around a little bit to see how.
I think it depends on the players. Let's look at the available players at running back because it falls off a cliff even in this range.
Yeah.
The other thing coming in a question, I think this has to be for Zach. It's, do we have a strong preference between Zamir White and Brian Robinson? So I'll leave that one for you, Zach.
Oh, it's Brian Robinson all day. Antonio Gibson goes down. Brian Robinson becomes the early down ball carrier there. Ron Rivera wants to supposedly do a little Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams hybrid type of thing once again here in Washington. If that happens, I think Brian Robinson is the guy. So I'll continue to bang the Brian Robinson drum up until the point of week 1 of the regular season.
Also, Washington's only 3 guys maximum in a committee. Las Vegas is likely 4. Since Brandon Bolden is a favorite, he will always be active for special teams, and he's still a pass-catching back whenever called upon.
I also love the fact that, we're hearing this from Zach that, he's thinking about we should go running back, and then we see the available options and Brian Robinson is their second in the queue. So
he's still there.
It's because nobody drafts him except for Zach.
That 193.3 ADP is definitely boosted up by me because in my mind, I think there's other people out there actually going for him, and there's actually not. He'd probably be like an 18th round pick if it wasn't for me.
So with the names that are in the queue, as we are one pick away, we know we've been sniped here a few times. Zach's left the queue empty just in case.
Yeah,
we will ask the drafter beside us to reveal himself if he is in the chat.
Oh, Amari Rogers.
Amari Rogers goes off the board. So who are you feeling here, John, based on the options available?
Yeah.
Sony Michel, somebody else that I'm drafting as well.
But Brian Robinson, Sony Michel, and Dearness Johnson are really kind of it for me. Maybe a little Eno Benjamin, but yeah, like all these guys. I expect Sony Michel to have the goal line role, a la the 49ers, how they use 3 to 4 backs. Chase Edmonds has 5 career carries inside the 5-yard line. He's already been archetype off the goal line. Now it is a different coach. So I do understand that the coaches can change these roles and pigeonholes for these players, but also like Chase Edmonds has never been treated that way. So I don't assume he's going to get that goal line role at all. Brian Robinson's fine. It's easy to see how he gets there as like a goal line thumper, knowing they want him to have a role. That's the report. So we can take him here. But also, you took Sony Michel. Okay.
I'll lay it out in a second, but go ahead and finish.
But the micro analysis for Brian Robinson is that like he's bad. And that doesn't matter if he has a role, but like, you have to be pretty much a bad player to not reach over 5 career yards per carry at Alabama. You have to go all the way back to 2007 and Terry Grant in order to find a player who did that until Brian Robinson came along. So like, he's not good, but also they've even said he's going to have a role, and we easily see how he earns a larger role. So it's a double-edged sword, but at the same time, like I get it. It's a last round pick. I totally get it.
Yeah, the Robinson pick for me is really, like you said, he's not the good player that we would probably want to be targeting. I like the 3rd round draft capital. I like the way Rivera's talked about him, and I just like the fact that I might be literally drafting a role that sees 10 plus opportunities at some point in time in the season, probably even more than that if Gibson actually misses time. I went Michelle because I do have way too much Brian Robinson. I thought you laid out a nice little case for him, but then also. We also have, I believe, Michelle correlated the whole way through the postseason with Buffalo, Green Bay, and New England. So
beautiful, good call.
I thought it was a nice little way to kind of close things out.
I expect Sony Michel to be the Jeff Wilson role or the Tyrion Davis-Price role, where they got the bigger back because they want to use them inside the 10-yard line, just like the 49ers did.
Yeah.
No, I think that all makes a lot of sense. And I was interested. I didn't think that Zach was going to make that switch there, but we go Sony Michel. I have been drafting quite a bit, but again, based on, I mentioned earlier, kind of the 15 or so names that I'm trying to get in the rosters, if I'm not taking running backs in those early rounds, he is one of them that I think could get very valuable touches in the Miami offense. Zach, if you can put up the full roster, we'll take a run down through it here. We'll see what we think of it. So we finish up with 6 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 8 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. We have Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Alexander Madison, Michael Carter, Khalil Herbert, Sony Michel. We get Kupp, Higgins, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, Julio Jones, Kendrick Bourne, Isaiah McKenzie. And then we also get George Kittle and Robert Tonyan. So I think we're in a very strong position in most, across the board with a lot of those. And I think you mentioned the correlations too being very strong. How are you feeling, John, now as we have finished that draft overall? How are you feeling about it?
A lot more comfortable than I was at first. The Rashad White pick, although I vamped against it, I do agree with it in that we're going for ceiling players. Like, it doesn't matter the scenario that needs to happen. We know the scenario. It's Leonard Fournette getting out of the way, but we need a player of his upside. Did lead the entire Pac-12 in targets among running backs last year, so we know he does have a receiving profile. So top heavy at wide receiver, correlation all the way through with 2 strong quarterbacks and a potential top tight end, like tight end 1 overall. I think it is actually a very strong team.
Yeah, no, I think it's really strong. Zach, how are you feeling after not getting Brian Robinson?
Yeah, overall I like it. Yeah, I literally slipped Michelle in there as a dramatic effect. It was a decision point for me. I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but I did. But I like the team overall. I think that teams can win without Brian Robinson. I think it's going to prove possible throughout the course of the season. We'll see how things play out, but the wide receivers I think are really, really good on this team. The way we started, 0 RB, 3rd overall pick, Cooper Kupp, Higgins, Mike Williams. You might have 3 top 15 wide receivers right there if things go accordingly, which I think is what we ultimately want in these 0 RB builds. So I don't have anything to complain about. Stacked nicely with the quarterbacks. I thought it was a good team. George Kittle, we know what he can do when healthy. Hopefully that happens. I think Trey Lance could easily funnel targets his way. So, yeah, I'm all in on the squad.
Yeah, and when we look at a team like this, there's obviously a lot of things we can say, like, we don't have an elite running back option at the moment, obviously, but depending on how it plays out in Seattle, Kenneth Walker could be the starting running back quite early in the season. White, if something did happen, obviously, to Fournette, but could have a standalone value as well. There is a lot of the players that we have selected here outside of Sonny Michel in the last couple of rounds that really probably do need an injury, unfortunately, for them to step in. The likes of Alexander Madison will get some work, but probably is not, standing in there and getting himself 15 points a week with, Cook in the lineup. But we have Burrow, who we mentioned. We have the 3 wide receivers in Kupp, Higgins, and Williams, and then we have George Kittle. And the real way that a roster like this is going to win, obviously you need depth, but you do need Joe Burrow as a top 5 quarterback. You need those wide receivers who you mentioned to all be in the top 15 at minimum. And then you need the George Kittle, to be the tight end 1. And that's how a team like this gets really pushed up, I think, if we're looking at long term as we run through. But that is a lot of fun. I'll give you another chance to obviously give it a plug, John. You mentioned that the guide is coming out, or the team by team previews. If you want to let everyone, in case somebody tuned in later in the show, to let them know where to find it.
44.com team previews. If you want a taste, the Denver preview is completely free if you go to the website. The rest behind the paywall, which you can now get 10% off if you sign up at 44.com before the summer, because veterans report on August 7th to training camp. That's when every team is there in time, I believe. And so our personal time is almost up. It's almost time to sit down and permanently grind our lives away. So that's what I'm doing right now with the team previews. They should all be done here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then from then on, we'll have, if you get the sub right now ahead of time, it'll be Daigle's guys, the guys I am drafting, my top 20 fades as well as attacking default rank, since we know Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, their ADP rankings are not sorted properly according to all of our respective projections. So you can get ahead right now of all those things.
Yeah, that is one way to put it. And we started drafting a lot of leagues recently, again, back over at the FFPC. We're drafting on Underdog, and to see some of the variation and where players are going, even in half point versus PPR, some of the players that are going ahead of other players in half point PPR that are going behind them then in PPR leagues. It just, there's some real values there at the minute. So
when you draft on Underdog at FFPC, you just forget about how bad all the other leagues are and setting their ADPs. Like, it's like they pop them in August and don't use anything to adjust them initially, just like last year's finishes. It's wild.
Yeah, and we won't get into Madden rankings, but it seems like something like that might happen there as well. But yeah, Zach, anything you've got going on in the next week or so you want to let people know about?
No, I got an article I'm working on for later on this week over at NBC Sports Edge. It will be I think it's actually going to be called Players I Like in Best Ball article, something along those lines, which, is always something that we kind of harp on Twitter because we like certain players better in best ball than we do redraft. But nonetheless, I'm going to be looking at some players for an article. And then next week, I do have a team preview coming out, my last one for NBC over on the Washington Commanders, my hometown commies. Going to be doing my write-up for them.
Awesome. Make sure you follow Zach on Twitter at ZK_FFB. I believe, Zach, next week we are on deck with Mike Leone. And then after that, I think it is JJ Zachary. Do not quote me on that. I think that's the way we have it set up. So make sure you're subscribed to the RotoViz. I keep saying podcast feed because I'm so used to doing these as podcasts. The RotoViz YouTube channel. Check out the Best Ball Show as well, the RotoViz Best Ball Show in podcast format. Some great shows recently as well with Connor O'Driscoll. Check those out. Don't miss out on them. All the information on that is in the show notes for today's show. Give a thumbs up to this video, and until we're back with another show, have a good